this is what I've been waiting for. This is the important thing. A group of universities, Lancaster, Manchester, and University College London, have got together to compile the Dictionary of British Slave Trading. It's going to have 6,500 Britons in it listed, including smaller investors, women, and failed investors whose linked with the slave trade have not been highlighted before. So in other words, it'll be a new method whereby we can take anyone living today, any 21st century person alive today, and see if 350 years ago one of their ancestors, invested £5 into a plantation in the Caribbean or something, and then we can denounce that living person and make them into a pariah and pillory them and get them sacked from their jobs. That's what we need, isn't it? We need this slave trade dictionary like a hole in the head, I would say. This obsession with the slave trade is now turning into a national sickness, I would contend. But I wonder what our next guest feels about the situation. That's the excellent columnist for The Sun, The Spectator and The Sunday Times, Rod Liddle. Morning, Rod.
Good morning, mate. How you doing? Happy Christmas and everything.
And all that, yeah. Happy Brexit Day. Perhaps we could talk a bit about the general situation in this country in a minute, but I really wanted to engage you on the grim news that these three universities have got together to compile the University of British Slave Traders, the Dictionary of British Slave Traders, which will be a method by which we can find connections with anybody living with someone who 350 years ago might have chucked a few quid into the slave trade, and then we can denounce this person and ruin their lives. We don't need this dictionary, do we?
No, it's self-flagellating, imbecilic obsessiveness, and it's been going on for too long. And you'll say anyone from the 21st century. It's not anyone, is it? It's white English people from the 21st century.
Of course.
There's no mention of the Ottoman Empire. There's no mention of the people who profited from the slave trade, of whom there were very many in the West African countries, particularly Ghana. It's remarkable. I was in a cab a few months ago, and the driver was an Ethiopian guy who said how much he hated Britain. And I tried to restrain myself, which you normally do. I said, "Why do you?" He said, well, "You're the country that invented slavery, the one country which has run slavery and enslaved nations." He'd never heard of the Roman Empire. He'd never heard of the Ottoman Empire. He'd never heard of the slavery which continued in his own bloody country for hundreds of years after we'd stopped it.
And he'd never heard of the fact that we were the first country to abolish it.
No, indeed, and that it continued in Ethiopia, which has never been colonised. And that's what these universities are doing. What effectively they're doing is they're kind of implanting into the brains of people that we alone were the slavers. We alone had this wickedness, and it's reflected in that very stupid woman who is the chief librarian at the British Library, Liz Jolly, who said that white people invented racism. Which being now, we invented the television, the printing press, democracy.
We never get enough credit for our achievement in inventing slavery and racism. Yeah.
No, that's right. But we invented racism, much as I suppose we invented sin, bad behaviour, mosquitoes. I mean, it's just utter rubbish. And it's time we got over it.
Yeah. Now, one of the authors of this important new dictionary of slavery is a guy called Professor William Pettigrew. He's at the University of Lancaster, and he said that the Black Lives Matter movement had made it even more important that people have a resource of high-quality information to go to obtain data about the breadth of Britain's involvement in the slave trade. Now, this is nonsense, absolutely ridiculous. But what I want to discuss really with you, Rod, is this is now turning into a kind of national insanity, isn't it? There is madness afoot here. Why is this nation obsessing on the actions of slave traders that lived 3 centuries ago. Surely that's in the past. We can move on from that, can't we?
It's not, mate. It's not. It's not obsessing. It's a tiny, tiny minority who are obsessing. And they've been able to get away with it, at least partly because of COVID. Because this kind of shroud has been placed over the country. And so we have footballers taking a knee before their games in support of an organisation which wishes to abolish the family and capitalism. And it would never have happened if there had been fans in the grounds. Because as soon as the fans were allowed in the grounds, what happened? People booed. You know, and not just at my club, Millwall, but also at Colchester or West Ham, at Dallas in the USA. People will not stand for it. And a lot of this has got through simply because this has been an incredible year where the lone voice of common sense of the public simply hasn't been heard.
We've been eclipsed. The people have been eclipsed by the lockdowns, the coronavirus obsession, and the authorities, be it political or in this case football, have been able to proceed without any objection or comment from the public, from the people, from the fans, from the people who support them. And that's been a strange syndrome, I think, that the authorities have gone off on this sort of woke PC tangent, unfettered by public opinion, and public opinion has always been against it. It's very strange.
It is, well, it's salutary lesson to us, isn't it, that when we accept these restrictions which are put on our lives, there is nothing they won't try and get away with. And you saw it with the BBC. It was quite explicit. They used COVID as an excuse for banning the words of Land of Hope and Glory and Rule Britannia from the proms until the new DG stepped in. And it was absolutely clear, you know, we can get away with this now, and they can't do anything about it. We'll say it's about health and safety. Absolute balls.
Yeah, well, it was, yes. And you know, you're right. Of course, the whole woke thing, this slavery obsession, which is sort of part and parcel of the same syndrome, is the province of an extremely small, tiny, but vocal and noisy minority. What I would hope for in 2021, first of all, would be that the Dictionary of British Slave Traders never gets published, and secondly, that the people's voice gets heard, and somehow or other we manage to push back against these noisy people, this noisy minority, that are actually having a very pernicious effect on our society.
Well, and also that we should hear the truth. I mean, my daughter, when she was at a state school last year, the history lessons she got, it was absolutely clear, and it was not contested, that the reason that Africa was in poverty was because of colonialism, which is so easy to disprove in 1 minute. You know, by saying, well, look at Ethiopia, which was never colonized, exactly the same as Eritrea next door, which was, you know, just as badly off, just as despotic, just as impoverished. Look at Liberia, which was never colonized, just as badly off as Sierra Leone next door. So it's very easy. And then you can say, look at Singapore, colonized for 200 years and the most affluent country in the world. You know, all you have to do is ask those questions. But there's a reluctance to face the truth. And it's because this liberal mindset is based upon fallacy. And you pick it apart and it all collapses.
Talking of which, Rod, does at your daughter's school, do they get taught critical race theory? Because schools all over the country are now being taught critical race theory, which is a very controversial and dubious philosophy, whereby you are told, if you're white, that even though you don't think you're racist, you really, really are. Okay, right. If lunatic adults want to indulge in learning this kind of claptrap, fine. But it seems to me really dangerous that we're allowing teachers in state schools to teach kids this nonsense.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, and I'm sure she was. We got her out of there. Had enough of it because not only were they, when they were teaching that kind of rubbish, but most of the time they weren't teaching at all. During COVID, no lessons whatsoever, no lessons online. So we thought, get her out.
Actually, it's a bit like no deal's better than a deal. That it's probably under a lot of state schools. It's probably much better for the kids that they were getting no lessons at all.
Oh well, no, she did get lessons. She got lessons from me in how the British Empire brought decency and democracy to the world.
Excellent.
Just as a corrective for 5 minutes.
Yeah.